How long was Laken Snelling? And bonus question, why are the laws problematic in this case? And how can it charge an innocent person? I'm actually going to dissect the first two bonus questions first as a little bit of an appetizer, but also because I actually think it's not an appetizer. I think it should be the main entree, but I purposely did word this to catch people's views because I know that the answer is what people are wanting, but this is more important. The charges are concealment of a birth, tampering with evidence, and abuse of a corpse. Under Kentucky law, if you have a stillbirth at 20 weeks or a birth weight of 350 grams, you must report the birth. You have to get the stillborn certificate. This is clearly outlined under Kentucky law, but it's not very well known. It's not, especially the 350 grams part, which is problematic in itself. So this law essentially means when you conceal a birth, whether born or live, aka a stillbirth, it has to be of 20 weeks or 350 grams. Now, personally, I will go ahead and just answer the question of the main thing. We don't officially know, but the fact that the charges are still there after autopsy, I do believe they know gestational age. I do. And I do believe they know the birth weight. I do. And I believe it's either the baby was 20 weeks or more, or the baby had weighed at birth 350 grams. Otherwise, if not, the charges would have dropped already. The charges would have dropped. The only way they would drop in the future is if the autopsy came back and they were not able to determine gestational age. And in the second autopsy they're planning on doing, it is revealed that the gestational age as well as the birth weight is under 20 weeks and under 350 grams. It is required in order to be prosecuted and charged and convicted of concealment of a birth for one of the two, 20 weeks or more or 350 grams or more. Without either of those things, there would be no charge, which also means if you are 17 weeks along, and you have a miscarriage, because legally speaking, in Kentucky, by the way, even if you're not at 20 weeks, despite the fact medically, please look up the medical definition before you try and argue with me or correct me. Medically speaking, a stillbirth is only 20 weeks or more. It does not matter the weight. It is only 20 weeks or more. Legally, under Kentucky law, you have to get the stillborn certificate if you're under 20 weeks and the baby had weighed 350 grams or more. Even though, and the weirdest part here is at 20 weeks, a baby would only weigh 310 to 330 grams. A baby would only weigh 310 to 330 grams on average, at least. But there are some exemptions to this, and one is, as you know, if you are 17 weeks along and you have gestational diabetes and you have a miscarriage at home, congratulations, your baby is 350 grams. You have to report that baby. You have to get a stillborn certificate, which is insane to me. We need to stop with the medical laws and then adding stuff to it that contradicts the medical science. Nothing medically says that a baby born under 20 weeks but is 350 grams is a stillborn scientifically. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. This is not based in science. This is based on some sort of personal view, and we have to assume it's some sort of personal view or religious view, because there's been no reason ever cited as to why they add 350 grams, despite the fact the average 20 weeker is 310 to 330, and it's either or in order to get the charge. So at 17 weeks, you have gestational diabetes, you have a miscarriage at home. Well, legally, even though medically it was a miscarriage, legally, if the weight was 350 grams or more, you had a stillbirth and you have to report it under law. Otherwise, that is concealment of a birth. And because it's a stillbirth, there's a death, you get the charge. You get the charge whether or not you intentionally had caused the demise of the baby. It doesn't matter. We are literally charging people with stillbirth. Tampering with evidence is not something I'm gonna fight on. That's good. That's logical. I understand that 100%. I have no beef with that. But it gets worse. The harm, the abuse to a corpse in this case. We don't know what she did to the baby, but you don't have to do anything to the baby. It's also about how you handle the remains. Meaning, if you were 17 weeks along in Kentucky, you have gestational diabetes, you have a miscarriage medically, but the baby weighs 350 grams, and you don't report the baby's birth as a stillbirth, you already have the concealment. You clean up after birth. Congratulations, you have tampering with evidence. And then you decide, due to your personal practices on how to deal with such a young loss, that you wash the baby. You place this baby in a bath with essential oils and herbs, and then you dry the baby. You put more essential oil and herbs with the baby in order to conceal some of the scent. You wrap the baby in a swaddle with a blanket that you originally had bought and intended to use in the hospital after a live birth. You place this baby in a decorative box, and you place this baby either on a mantle or a shrine, depending on your religious views. And you have this baby surrounded with flowers, pictures of you in the pregnancy, and the sonogram, and candles in your own home. That's going you're gonna get the charge of the abuse to the corpse for that too. Let me repeat myself. You will get the charge of abuse to a corpse if you do this, because of Kentucky law and how it is written. Go ahead and look up yourself what mishandling the remains of a corpse in Kentucky is. It is anything that would cause outrage in an ordinary family, household, whatever the third final word is, social. Outrage, ordinary, outrage, ordinary. Do you not realize how subjective that is? How this can easily be spun for racist prosecution, religious prosecution? Oh, because your beliefs in handling the dead is to keep the dead in your home before burial for a month? That's not ordinary to us Christians. Because Kentucky is the most number one religious view in Kentucky is Christianity. The most popular method of choice in handling the remains of loss in Kentucky and in most of the states, the United States, is cremation. The second you start adding herbs and essential oils or a shrine into the mix, even if it's your own religious and cultural view, that's no longer ordinary. And to a very toxic and ignorant Christian, not saying all are, I'm specifically saying the toxic and ignorant ones here, so don't get it twisted. They're just going to simplify your views as witchcraft. And I can already see the headline of that 17-week. Woman has stillbirth and uses the baby's remains for witchcraft. This is exactly... You can't tell me someone hasn't already been convicted, but it hasn't gone viral for at least 2 of the 3 convictions that Laken Snelling has. And it was something like this. Something innocent. Something which I believe most of us hearing this would agree that this 17-week gestational birth, miscarriage, medically, resulting at 350 grams, and bathing the baby, treating the baby with honor and respect in accordance to your religious and cultural views. That's not wrong. But legally it is. When we say that women, people alike, are being prosecuted for miscarriage and stillbirths, this is what we're talking about. We're not talking about Laken Snelling. We're talking about the laws themselves. There's no exemption for a scenario like I listed. There's no exemption. How do I think that these charges should be, how they should be written? Well, first of all, when it comes to the concealment of the birth and there's a corpse, I believe that charge should only be a charge when homicide occurs. Meaning, for example, if Laken Snelling, if the autopsy comes back another time and they realize that, oh wow, this baby boy was suffocated. Oh wow, this baby boy was also 38 weeks. Oh wow, this baby boy was also mutilated. And that's why they had to perform an autopsy. The genitalia was completely mutilated. I'm not saying this is the case. We don't know that. I'm hypothetically. At that point, she's gonna be facing a type of homicide charge in Kentucky, and that's also when I think that second charge, in addition to that, of concealment of a birth, should also be there. Concealment of itself typically is for a crime. You're hiding a crime. That's typically what it is. But technically in Kentucky, it is a crime because under law, you're supposed to report any stillbirth and technically miscarriage if 20 weeks or more or 350 grams in weight. And while it is uncommon for under 20 weeks to be 350 grams in weight, it's not impossible. Being a bigger person, having gestational diabetes, these are all things, and there's so much more too that I can't even think of on the top of my head that can cause a larger birth weight. Right? Anyways, this is wrong. This is wrong. This is wrong. I guarantee someone has already been charged with at least 2 of the 3, if not all 3 of these crimes, and it has a purely innocent scenario. And the other charge with the abuse of the corpse, I really don't believe that this should occur. Excuse me, senor. I really don't believe that this should occur based on outrage of an ordinary family, because this is when we get racist prosecutions. This is when we get religious prosecutions. No, stick it with inhumane treatment, which one can argue that is also subjective. But hey, if we're going to choose a subjective word, I'd rather the inhumane, because what is inhumane about using oils, herbs, wrapping the body, and keeping the body in a secluded and safe place? Christianity, by the way, that's exactly what they did to Jesus. That's what they did to Jesus. That's what they did to Jesus. So let's not play games here, okay? We can argue inhumane is subjective as well, but it is definitely less subjective and can be less likely to be weaponized than saying outrage an ordinary family. No, ma'am. Right? No, ma'am. No, ma'am. We should not be using that. That is ridiculous. That is wrong. That is disgusting. That is horrible. That is terrifying. You're telling me if you are 19 weeks and 6 days and you are just a bigger person and you have a baby, a stillborn at 350 grams, and you take this baby remains and you decide to keep it in a little box, and then you bury this baby in a garden, and this garden provides fruit, produce, you can be charged with this too, because who buries a dead body with the food you're going to eat? That's not ordinary. That would outrage people. That would outrage some people. That's not considered ordinary. You're gonna can bury a dead body in the garden you eat from? That just sounds weird. That just sounds wrong. That just sounds gross. But is this inhumane? You would be charged 19 weeks, 6 days, stillborn at home, clean up after yourselves, take the baby's remains, place it in a box, bury the baby in your own garden. You would be charged with the same thing as Laken Snelling. You would be charged with the exact same thing. The exact same thing. Regardless of whether Laken Snelling is guilty or not, or morally innocent or not, regardless of the outcome of the trial, the laws themselves are problematic and need to be changed. It should not be left to something so open-ended and subjective like that. That is wrong. That is how we get innocent people charged. That is how we weaponize these type of laws in order to push racist and religious views. Separation of church and state, first of all. And then, hello. We can't discriminate against people. Going after people of color is a hate crime when you intentionally do a crime to them because of their color. But this is going to be twisted. This can easily be twisted. This can be easily weaponized. And also, do you think Kentucky is going to keep the law, especially if Laken Snelling is charged and convicted of all three things? Do you think they're going to keep the laws exactly the same? Or do you think that they're going to lessen the requirements? Meaning, something like, oh, let's change 20 weeks to 16. Let's change the 350 grams to 280. Do you think it's not... Do you think they're not gonna try and... No, they're gonna do that. They're gonna do that. I'm saying this now. I am saying this now. If she is charged with all three things, regardless of what the actual case entails, okay? Regardless. They're going to at least change one of those two laws I have a problem with. And it's going to become worse to the point where more people who are truly morally innocent, regardless if Laken Snelling is or not, can be convicted. And that is horrifying. We should feel threatened by this. This is not okay. I can see even outrage of an ordinary family being changed to something even worse. If the treatment of a corpse goes against proper family values, I could see that. I could see it changing into that. If it wasn't for the fact that I'm so certain the laws are going to get worse, I would continue with examples. But honestly, I'm scared someone's going to see this, send it to someone in power, and they use my video as an idea of what they should actually change it to. And I don't want that. But I feel like those two things are the most obvious, and I'm just going to keep it as that. But also, what's going to stop all the other states surrounding Kentucky that already have laws similar to this to begin with, and all these abortion bans, from looking at Kentucky and going, hey, let me beat you to the punch and do this myself. 16 weeks, let's go. It's gonna happen. If this leads to a conviction, I'm saying it now. It's gonna happen. It's going to happen. It's gonna happen. Watch it. I was convinced Roe v. Wade would never be overturned. I was convinced. I didn't have no gut feeling. To me, it didn't seem logical for it to be overturned. It didn't seem logical. But I realized, yeah, it wasn't logical. But the reason it happened now, because it was set up to happen realistically. And I've been working on my views. to start seeing things more realistically. And I'm telling you, this will realistically happen. Logically, it shouldn't, but I think this is going to happen. Now, what do I think actually happened with Laken Snelling? First of all, before I go into my theory, I can say right here, full honesty, I'm probably wrong. I'm probably wrong. She could have had this baby at 38 weeks, full term, and suffocated that boy and mutilated the body. I don't know. They haven't released that information. And in that case, she should be charged, but those laws should still be changed because innocent people could still be charged, and it should change to when it comes to the concealment. I believe that should only occur when it's the concealment of the homicide following the concealment of a birth, right? That's what I think it should be. That's what I think it should be. And it should be 20 weeks only. Grams irrelevant. Weight irrelevant. Why is that there? By the way, it's not stated anywhere under Kentucky law, anywhere, why 350 grams is even on there. And I have my own speculations on that, but I'm not going to dive into it. I don't want to make me mad. But, and then the second one, get rid of the, I would take inhumane treatment, which is still subjective, over outrage ordinary families. What are you talking about? No. The laws itself is going to need to change in a positive way that will prevent people who are truly innocent from being criminalized, regardless if this is true or not. Where she could be 38 weeks. She could have been, gave birth to her boy, and he was alive, and she suffocated him. And then he mutilated his body so much they couldn't even tell if it was a boy or not. That could have been it. I don't know. We don't know that. What I think happened? Well, here's what we do know. Number one, she's not native to Kentucky, meaning she's not going to know the laws of Kentucky, and meaning her home is Tennessee. Number two, what we do know is because of the laws, and more than likely the autopsy has already identified gestational age and birth weight, she more than likely was at least 20 weeks along, or the baby boy weighed 350 grams or more. I don't know why I believe this, but I believe it's 25 weeks. I believe the boy was 25 weeks. I believe the boy was a stillborn. I believe she placed everything in a trash bag because of her intentions. Because I believe this was a wanted pregnancy, in a sense of maybe it didn't start off as wanted by means as a unexpected pregnancy, but I do believe she had the resources, she had the opportunity, she had the money, where if she didn't want this pregnancy, this baby boy, I do believe she very well could have easily traveled to Illinois, especially over the summer. School just began again, and terminate the pregnancy if she truly didn't want this baby. I do believe she would have just terminated. I do believe she would have had an abortion. But the fact that she didn't, and she also has kept the remains, she hasn't thrown away the remains, I do believe, personally, she intended to take the remains back with her to Tennessee for a proper burial. And I do believe that all of the items used for the cleanup and everything else was, one, just partially to keep everything together, and two, I do believe she possibly intended to, whatever all of the stuff from that is, whatever it may be, there's some stuff in there she wanted to keep as a keepsake. You know, but one thing that is boggling my mind is, where's the placenta? What happened to her placenta? When did she give birth? Where? Right? Where? When and where? How long after she gave birth to when police showed up. Like, these are what's confusing me. Now, what's interesting though is 20 weeks, at 20 weeks along, you can very visibly see on a stillborn their genitalia. But they had to do an autopsy to determine the baby being a boy or a girl. But this is interesting to me because she's still being charged, which means more than likely the gestational age is 20 weeks or more, or the weight of 350 grams. So either this baby was really young but weighed a lot and just wasn't fully developed, had some sort of condition to not be fully developed in that area, or she gave birth at least 8 days before the remains were discovered, because that's when mummification occurs, and mummification can impact the signs of reproduction, external reproduction, and you would need to do an autopsy to look at the reproductive organs, or even to do a test where they take bone or teeth fragments, extract the cells to determine being female or male genetically as well. But both of those are done during, well, the DNA can be done after autopsy, but it's through the autopsy, right? So it's one of those three things. Either the baby was underdeveloped, the baby had been born at least 8 days prior, or there was something wrong with the reproduction itself, with the development, which does raise a question with all three of these things. One, if this occurred 8 days prior, and mummification had set in, and that is all why and everything else, my question is the smell. Is that how people knew? Because even wrapped up in a towel in a trash bag, once you hit 8 days of decomposition, that's not going to prevent the smell. Number two, if it's due to the age actually being under 20 weeks, but weighed so much, my question also is why? Because we know her details after being arrested, right? We know what she looks like. We know her height. We know an estimate of her average weight. She's not big enough, but we don't know the father too, and currently there is a paternity test being done. I mean, they could potentially have a really big baby if that's the father, but I find it kind of improbable, not impossible, but improbable. But that is my question. And then the third way is the reproduction development itself, despite being 20 weeks, but is significantly damaged. Was this purposeful mutilation, or was this absolutely biological? And here's the thing, right now they're having to do microscopic analysis, but they haven't displayed what specifically. They haven't said what. And there's a few different things during an autopsy where they do this, and it's different. It's for different things. You have, you know, the cause of death and everything else. But I wonder if the reproductive organs essentially are damaged, and they're trying to figure out, was this done intentionally, or is this maybe the cause of death in itself? That there was something developing wrong with the reproductive organs and in the system itself, and this did impact the rest of the body, just not obviously, and now they're having to do a cellular analysis to determine if it's linked. I don't know. A lot of people have been talking about the lungs, and maybe it's the microscopic cellular analysis to determine if oxygen had penetrated the cell walls and yada yada, but I don't think that's the one, and I don't think it was for time of death either. I really don't. I think it actually is something, I believe something had developed improperly. Even if it's not the reproductive organs, I think there was something that wasn't developed properly, or is an injury, but they don't know if it was a development. It's a question on which is it. Was this not developed properly, or was this a sign of homicide? Which one is it? And that's what they're trying to figure out. But we don't know. They aren't giving us any details, which is common in trials. They're not supposed to give a lot of details out. But this whole case is an interesting one. And the thing is I also have to ask, had Laken Snelling never done the things she did, would the law still change into something worse? Or if because of her case, people are able to recognize the problems within these laws, and they're actually changed to help prevent innocent people from being behind bars, what would have happened had it not resulted in that change? Because these laws are scary. And I'm fully convinced that other states are going to be copying this laws, honestly, regardless of the conviction. If not already have it, and the ones that do have it, the ones that copy, it's going to be lower than 20 weeks. I guarantee it. It's going to be a lot of people have gone through her social media, and I really didn't want to talk about this part, and I tried my best to avoid it, but I was on one of my socials, and somebody had literally commented the pictures, and I saw them, and it looked like maternity photos, but realistically, I don't like commenting on people's bodies like that. Okay, people can look pregnant for so many different reasons. You don't know if she has endometriosis. You don't know if she's swelling up in that photo from having gallbladder issues. I swelled up like a balloon. I looked pregnant. We don't know if she was pregnant in those photos. I will say, the poses, it kind of looks like that. It literally does look like some pose, but also not. But that also kind of supports where if she was pregnant, the reason why it's not so obvious in the maternity photos if she was pregnant in these photos is because I believe it supports my theory that she was keeping this pregnancy a secret out of fear of judgment from her family, or even from being cut off financially, and having support with her tuition being paid for if her family even is the one paying for her tuition. We don't know. 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 But there's a bigger battle than Laken Snelling, and it's the loss she's charged with themselves itself. And I'm very fearful on what the future could hold in regards to these laws. But if you are interested in this topic, I suggest doing your own research. Specifically, I suggest looking up the stillborn certificate law in Kentucky. I suggest looking up the charges themselves in Kentucky. I also suggest looking up the 20 grams, 20 weeks, and 350 grams of Kentucky. I suggest looking up what a medical stillbirth is by definition, and I suggest looking up what the medical definition of a miscarriage is, both in regards to gestational week. I know I'm not wrong. I already fact checked it. I am not wrong on what I've said about the laws, on what I've said about the medical definitions. I know I am correct. Whether you believe me or not, please look it up yourself. See with your own eyes. Read it. Because listening to me talk is one thing. When you read something yourself, that's a whole different perspective. And no matter what your views are, no matter what you believe, it's going to hit differently. And we need to speak on this. And we need to become aware on this. Because if we don't, things are going to become even more worse than what they already are. If we don't hold people accountable, if we don't talk and publicly speak on these laws, we are going to have more and more laws that will convict people for having a stillborn and miscarriage. It's going to happen. If we don't speak up on it, it will happen. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. Because under Kentucky law, a miscarriage can be prosecuted. If you're 17 weeks and you miscarry, and that baby weighed 350 grams or more, they legally consider that a stillborn, even though medically it's a miscarriage. And if you don't report it, that is concealment of a birth, regardless of the fact that it's a stillborn. You can be charged. You can be charged. And this has likely already resulted in somebody being locked up in a purely innocent scenario. And I don't know who that person is. I have 2 kids. I've made a lot of sacrifice for them. I've given them my all. If you can be charged with a miscarriage, I mean, yeah, in Kentucky, this one is up to a year. It's still a year. That's a birthday for each child you already have. That's every holiday for each child you have that y'all celebrate. That's the whole year of milestones, a whole year of achievements, a whole year of school or daycare or memories you will never be able to have with your children because you didn't report a miscarriage. And it's not like this law is commonly known, because you don't need to be educated on the laws in order to be convicted. And I'm not saying that everybody should know every single law, because, you know, how do you prove it, how do you disprove it, yada yada yada, in order to result in a conviction. Some things are clear as day wrong. But this, something like this, yeah, if you're gonna have a law like this, you need to let people know. It should literally be a part of when you're confirming for a pregnancy, that medical staff will have to tell you about your laws, or have it posted in their office that it's under law that you must report pregnancy loss after 20 weeks or at 350 grams. It should be posted in medical offices. It should be known. It should be known if you're gonna have this, which it shouldn't even have the 350 grams. Oh my god. Why? That one is just crazy. They're both crazy. Out. Having laws like this, I argue, is not ordinary, and I am outraged. How about them apples, okay? Like, what do I get from that? A gluten-free cookie? We call that an apple. I'm so tired. I only got a few hours of sleep trying to research all of this, and there's somebody there. There's somebody who has either is behind bars or have been behind bars, at least one person. Who is that person? What was their life? What did they have to leave behind, and who did they leave behind to serve a sentence for being morally innocent? I hope Laken Snelling provides wonderful arguments on the law themselves being problematic, which will ignite this conversation from being bigger than what it is, because I don't see really anyone else talking about what I'm talking about. I hope he digs deep and he finds those cases, or case, if there's just one, and he brings it up in trial. Personally, I feel like he has a moral obligation, because he has to know this is wrong. He has to know the laws are too subjective. He has to know that this could easily put an innocent person, and by that logic, since he has the access and resources to other cases, he should utilize that to see who else. And I do believe that it would be smart too to use in a case, especially for the last charge, would outrage ordinary families. Well, if there's something that's been consistent, say he finds 13 cases, and all those 13 cases with Laken Snelling has there's something really common with all three of them, and it results in the trash bags, whether it's they all have the same mental health diagnosis, or they were all students, or they were all young, or this was all their first pregnancy, or maybe they all didn't know. We don't know, but if something is consistent with all of the ones that he's able to find in Kentucky with this charge, I feel it would be easily able to argue, well, ordinary subjective. Here, what's ordinary to you may not be ordinary for others, but when we talk about these specific actions, well, this is considered ordinary, as in all 13 of these other people with the exact same charge all had this same factor. So obviously with this factor, this is ordinary. Like something like that. Being able to play on every single little detail on how and why this is subjective is important, not just to defend Laken Snelling, whether she deserves the defending or not, on the facts of the case that we still do not know, but to point out that there needs to be law reform on these laws. And I feel like he definitely has a moral obligation to point it out as much as he can in this trial. And that's what I hope to see. That's what I hope to hear. That is what I hope to read. But I don't know if that's what the attorney is going to do. I really hope that is what the attorney is going to do. But I don't think so. I don't know why I do, but I don't think, even if he does, he's either not going to do it well or enough. I really think, number one, she's going to be convicted for at least 2 of these 3 crimes. Personally, I believe it's going to be for the concealment of a birth and tampering with evidence. I believe there is a potential to have the third charge dropped. But I do believe she will be charged with the first two, no matter if she's morally innocent or not. But at the end of the day, we don't know the gestational age. We don't know how long it was when they found the remains to when she had given birth. We don't know any of the autopsy findings. We don't know who the father is. We don't know why Laken did what she did. We don't know why, if she didn't want the pregnancy, if that's what it is, why she just didn't go to Illinois and have an abortion, or better yet, go online and order an abortion pill. I mean, if you're gonna break the law somehow, why not do it that way? That sounds more humane than if it's found she intentionally killed her son. We don't know who, what, when, where, why about most of the facts in this case. But no matter the facts of the case, I unfortunately do believe she will be charged with that minimum. I can also see the tampering evidence being waived. So at minimum, I do believe she's going to be charged with concealment of the birth, because I feel if the autopsy did put gestational age and birth weight, that's why the charges haven't already been dropped. And I do believe the autopsy does have that information. I do believe they know. I do believe. And it's for that reason alone, of the qualifications of 20 weeks or more, or 350 grams or more, and not reporting the birth of the baby, whether stillborn or death through homicide. I believe at minimum she will have that charge. At minimum, she will have that charge. I don't believe there is any case at all where all three charges are going to be dismissed, which is actually why I came to that thought last night. But then I had another thought. Why did she plead not guilty? If her attorney was good, her attorney had to have told her at the bare minimum she's going to get that charge based on the autopsy findings. So why choose not guilty? I mean, that's the lesser of the two. It is a misdemeanor. And then it hit me. This is hopeful thinking, wishful thinking, whatever. But I believe both her attorney and Laken want this case to be as public as possible. And they know there's going to be at least one conviction, one count. I think they know. And they want everyone to know. And I do hope that's the case. Because otherwise, she's being led down to a jury, and she may end up with the max sentencing this way, in hopes all of them will be dropped off of false advice or unrealistic advice, saying that, oh, we'll be able to get all these dropped. We may be able to get all these dropped. We don't know about any real plea deals or anything like that. But I definitely do feel like something had to have been offered already at this point before saying not guilty, which means whatever that offer was, I have to wonder if that offer, if there was one, is better than a year of being in prison, which is the minimum for what I think the lesser charge would stick for would be. She got screwed. She got screwed. Like, if she had no intention of making this a public case for publicity to spark a change, because she has no idea this even needs to spark a change, in a sense, to the point of which I speak on, and this is purely in hopes to get the least amount of sentencing possible to having the charges fully dropped, she is being led on horribly by her attorney, or maybe her attorney has already told her everything, that she more than likely is going to get at least one charge, but more than likely two of them. And she's facing some time, and she just wants to try. She just wants to try. That could be it too. Either way, this whole thing's, I have to keep stopping because I'm in so much disbelief. Like, I can't imagine my own daughter being charged like this. Like, if she moved to Kentucky or if Texas adopted this law, and when she becomes an adult, she has a miscarriage or a stillbirth, and then she faces concealment of a birth because she didn't report it, because she didn't know. Like, and things get quietly passed all the time. But now that I know what this looks like, now I know these laws, I'm gonna have to keep my eye out for these laws, because I swear Texas is gonna adopt it too, if they don't already have something similar. I'm so scared to look it up. I'm so scared. I don't want to. But this case is horrifying. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. It's horrifying. We should be scared. We should be talking about the laws themselves in addition to Laken Snelling. You can speculate on Laken Snelling, but we also need to be talking about the laws themselves in this, because this is horrifying. And honestly, I really truly believe this is going to get just scarier and scarier and scarier. It's going to happen.